Hey everybody, welcome back to the How Did I Get Here podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Poley. Lots going on with the show these days. We have a star-studded lineup that we're super pumped about. Some housekeeping notes. Please make sure that you download the latest shows on Spotify and on our YouTube channel, the How Did I Get Here podcast. All of that helps out with our algorithm and makes it super easy for Preston to find us some really cool sponsors. Thank you for all the support, all the messages, and all the well wishes. We're going to keep doing it because we're having a lot of fun with it. So let's get right into it. Ernie Vales, here we are, man. Thanks for coming and sitting down with us.
Yeah. Well,
so the reason you're in Nashville is you're doing a mural for us for Iggy's, which is super dope. And how the whole conversation came about was, we had worked together in Chicago for a little bit. And I was thinking we have this huge wall in front of the restaurant. And I'm thinking, I want to get some sort of graffiti on there, something really cool and fun and edgy. And I pulled up some of your work and I said, well, this is the pinnacle. This is what we want to do. So I started talking to some people around town, some people in Chicago, and they had sent me some samples of things I could do. I was like, I need something more like what Ernie does. And so I kept saying myself, and I kept telling my brother Matthew, it's like, no, we need something like Ernie. And I think just dawned on me, I was like, why don't I call Ernie and see what he's doing? So I called you and you're like, yeah, let's do this. And you're super pumped about it.
Yeah.
So thanks for coming out. And obviously thanks for doing the podcast with us. But let's start out by, how did you start doing graffiti? And what was graffiti in the mid 80s? You grew up in New York City, early 80s?
Early mid 80s for me.
Yeah.
Graffiti had started in the mid 70s.
Yeah.
In New York.
So the connotation of graffiti art is kind of like the first things that normal people think of is vandalism, gangs.
That's a popular misconception.
Yeah.
The gang presence in New York was less existent than Los Angeles, where Los Angeles, you had to get around by car.
Yeah.
So you can mark territory. But in New York, you had the subway system. Mm-hmm. So you can get on a train and go through 10 different neighborhoods. And, everybody knew, you're like, don't get off here. Don't walk there.
Right. Right.
But it wasn't like, if you did walk through there, it wasn't guaranteed that you were going to get robbed. It was just, you just walk through a neighborhood.
Yeah.
It was normal for people from different neighborhoods to walk through your neighborhood. There was altercations, but it wasn't territorial like the West Coast.
Yeah, okay.
The train system was really efficient, and it really can get you from the deepest part of Queens to the end of the Bronx. So no, you wouldn't want to.
Right.
There was nothing at the end of the Bronx to go to except train yards.
Yeah.
and what they did is they put train yards all over the city. So literally we would say, do we want to paint the IRT, the BMT, or the IND line? Mm-hmm. And then you pick the line, and then you say, okay, where do we want to paint that? We can go to this place, this place, this place, this place. Oh, it's winter, so you can't go to that place. It's outdoors. We can go to this place, and that's how it was. You just went, and we've gotten rolled up with other graffiti groups. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't call them gangs. They were mostly graffiti groups, and we got rolled up on a couple times. And they're like, who are you? What are you doing here? And fortunately, I was very political in the sense of the graffiti world. So I made sure, no, we can't paint over this guy's name. Yeah. And if you did paint over somebody's name, you'd write their name back on your train. And so I had a really good reputation of being fair. Mm-hmm. And people had rolled up, and they're like, "Oh, I know who you are. I like your work."
But how does one get into graffiti then? How did you?
Well, it's everybody has a different road.
Sure.
Usually it could be a friend, a family member, an older person, or just standing on a train platform and seeing these pieces, every 5-10 minutes go by, and wondering how does that happen? Who does that?
Mm-hmm.
Where do you do that? How do you do that? So it's a curiosity at first, and then you get into it and you realize it's a culture. Mm-hmm. It's a culture that it's self-governed. There's cliques, but the cliques were more like, this crew paints in this yard a lot.
Right.
So if you don't have a problem with that crew, you can go there.
Were the crews stylistic then? Did they all kind of have their same kind of style or something?
Everybody had their own style.
Everyone had their own style. You just knew that they were part of that.
You could see like
dance troupe.
Yeah, like if some guy,
K-pop dance troops doing graffiti.
Like one guy is like, oh, I don't want to paint in the Bronx today. I'm going to go to Brooklyn, and he'd go to Brooklyn and he would do a piece, and everybody in Brooklyn would be like, so and so came and did a piece.
Yeah, okay.
Because that's so and so. You could write, A B C D.
Right.
And people would be like, no, that I know who that is.
Yeah. But you had a knack for drawing. You had a knack for, because I feel like, and I know nothing about these type of arts, but I feel like if you're a sketch artist, that can translate into other things. But working with like paints and spray paint,
it helps.
It helps a little bit. Yeah. But it's a learned, like spray painting is like a learned art, though, right?
Yeah. I saw back then there was 2 companies making spray cans. It was Rust-Oleum, actually 2.5. Rust-Oleum, Krylon, and Red Devil. Mm-hmm. You didn't have much to choose from. There was some other cans, but some of them were very low quality. Some of them would fade in the sun, and so. You learn as you go, or somebody else will tell you, oh, you got that wet look raspberry. I hope you like it for a few hours because it's not going to be there, after that. And, you just pick up things, you pick up, also, I would point out that like graffiti was completely non-racist. So there's a train station in the Bronx that it was outdoors and the train would leave, make a huge turn, and then make another turn so you could see both sides of the train. So you could be like, oh, there's something there I might want to take a picture of or something like that. You didn't, and you could be standing there on the platform and somebody on the other side of the platform, they always say, this is the term, it's like, yo, what you write? It's like, what you write? What's your name, your nom de plume, right? And it's funny, like over the years, people are like, yo, what you write? What you write? And I'm like, I actually don't write anything. I paint.
Yeah.
I just write my name over and over and over and over and over. Now there's 15 companies making spray cans. They make them with low pressure. They make them with high pressure. They make them big for filling, and they make, if there's a light blue and there's a dark blue, there's like 9 different shades in between. Mm-hmm. I had 2. I had light blue and I had a dark blue.
Are those companies making graffiti cans or spray paint cans specifically for graffiti artists?
Yeah. They're making them, like I said, you can go get a low pressure, which means you can get a finer line, so you can do more detail. Or they'll make a cap, like I have so many stories of manipulating caps to get a certain effect, to make the spray can do something when you twist your arm.
Yeah.
So I can get a really, really thin line and then pull back and then twist my arm and the line starts to widen. Like that. And I can use that as an effect on certain things. So basically what I'm saying is like all the new guys, they're lucky.
Yeah. What is it? Isn't that how it always is? Like I'm a huge MMA fan. And if you go back to look at the first UFC where it was a karate guy against a boxer.
Right.
And now it's like, you have these UFC champions that they have it all now, and you look back and you could say, how lucky they are. It's just it's a different sport. Would you say the graffiti world has like gone from being 2 cans to only doing certain things to now companies making specific cans for what you want? Like the game's changed, right?
Yeah.
How many times along has the game changed though?
Oh, it's constantly.
Constantly, right?
Constantly. Yeah. I mean, I heard so now the cans are superior. Beautiful paint, beautiful pressure. And I used to only have 2 caps. Mm-hmm. 1 cap to make the spray wide so you can cover a lot of coverage because you didn't bring a roller to the train yard. Yeah. It's just more stuff.
That's a lot of gear to be carrying around, right? Especially when you're running from the cops, right?
Yeah. It's all spray paint. So you have 1 cap for that. And then you have the cap that comes on the can. And that's it. Mm-hmm. That's it. I tried for weeks and weeks cutting the cap, inserting a little glue into the cap to slow the pressure out. You just tried anything. Yeah. You tried anything. And sometimes it worked. Sometimes it worked for a little while. you know. But yeah, it's also trains are a kind of non-existent. People in Europe paint trains. People in Asia will paint trains. The laws are different. People in America paint trains. They paint a lot of freight trains because they're very easy to get to, you know. And you just it's just like you get into a kitchen and they're like, you have to cook something for a gala tonight, and the kitchen's a mess. Yeah. So you're like, let's find out what works. And you start to think like, okay, I can do this with this. I can do this with that. This was the same.
So it's a testament of a true artist.
Yeah. It was
you put me in a room with a stove and I'll figure out how to cook something.
I was on a 2-story high elevated layup. It was one lane in the middle and 2 operating lanes on the side. So whenever you saw the headlights of the train, you had to either go under that train you were painting or inside that train and just wait for that train to pass. Because if they see you, they'll call the police. Right. And so we painted the train. Me and my friend painted the train. And you have to, it was winter, so it's freezing. Underneath your feet is these like 2x4s. There's 2x4s, 2x4s, 2x4s. Some places had 3. This one particular one had 2. So the space between the 2x4s is you know, it could be like 3-4 inches. Yeah. So we finished the train, and I have like 5 cans, and you keep them in your jacket so they don't freeze. Your hands are freezing, but the paint is fine. And I tell my friend, we have 5 cans. We can do a small piece on the next train. Do you think we have enough paint with 5 cans? That's right when I'm saying this, one of the cans falls out of my jacket right through the space. And we just like watch it. Boom.
All right, like I was saying, we have 4 cans.
So we've got 4 cans.
That's great.
Do you think we could make, you know, and the piece just got a little smaller.
Right.
You know, like you knew, like I can get this can and this can to do a fill-in, and I can do this can to do an outline, and that's about it. And that's about it. Yeah. So you know your limitations.
What were your first inspirations then? Like, how old were you when you decided that you wanted to do this? And what was the catalyst to get you into it?
17 when I started to get interested in it. Then I started to go in art and design high school in New York. Met a lot of other people who were just like me, and realized that there was 2 echelons in the school. There was the ones who painted trains and the ones who didn't. You know, so you had to like, you know, what is it? Like get your bones. Right?
It's like the greasers and the preps. Is that basically? Yeah. I mean, that's how I just envision that, right?
Yeah, like you literally
straight edge, and you know,
you graduate. You're like, oh, you don't sit at that lunch table
to
anymore.
100. Yeah, you can just walk into the room and be like, oh, these are the guys that are painting.
You could sit here and today. You know?
Right.
And you notice it right away. You're just like, oh, like somebody will be like, yeah, I saw your name on the train today, man. You want to sit here? Yeah. You know, wave to your old friends. Yeah, you guys should paint trains.
Yeah. What was the first piece that you did?
Oh, my wallet-sized piece.
Yeah.
So I'm painting with other people who have painted a train before, and I just thought, you know, I might be like 18, 19, so I'm fairly small, you know. And you paint. The train is huge. Like. You're standing on top of, there's a wooden rail that's over the third rail, that's the power rail. You're standing on top of that, and the bottom of the train is about here, like where you walk onto the train. So you're tiptoeing.
You're talking about like subway cars, right?
Subway cars.
Yeah.
And you're just reaching as high, and you're thinking, this is the biggest thing I've ever painted in my life. And when I saw the train, it was like, Bob, Joe, Ernie. It was like a footnote. Yeah. You know, like it went by, you're like, oh, it's got to be bigger. Like what I thought in my head was the biggest thing I ever painted. I was like, it's got to be 3 times.
So you have to over-exaggerate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to believe that, that line has to be 1.5 feet away. Because I'm thinking it should only be 6 inches away. No, it's got to, you have to believe your mind saying, no, it's got to be over there.
How much trial and error was that? I mean, obviously you saw your little name.
Well, 18 years old, you're so impressionable.
Yeah.
You know, like your mind just learns it right away. Like, boom, you're like, okay, I know I could line up the lines of the windows, and I know that if I put a letter E here, the R has to start at this third window. If it doesn't, it's too small. So, and
that was the scale of how you still use that scale to today then, or?
I use different ways. Like now they make really good projectors,
Yeah.
you know, so, but there, you know, a lot of times.
Do you consider that cheating?
I can do it. I can do it.
Consider
on the phone.
that cheating?
No.
No.
I'm old. You know, like, but the youth does it because it's available.
Well, it's technology. Like, why wouldn't you use it? Yeah.
And the youth doesn't know that wasn't cool once. You know, now at the end, it's all about the end product. You know, the piece comes out nice, great. That's
who cares how you got there?
That's all, because you can't fight that. You can't fight progress. You know, I started learning how to do faux finishes in restaurants, you know, and I met these like old world Italian masters, and they wouldn't paint if you were watching them. You know, they're like, no, we've been learning years and years. This is my Italian accent.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Molto bene.
and they're like, you see, it has to reflect light some places and not other places. And they were all like in their 60s, and I was like 22. And I looked at my friend. I'm like, they're going to take this to their grave, and then nobody's going to care anymore.
Correct. Just like old French chefs.
Nobody cares.
Right.
Like, you know, especially in the world we live in today, where you're like, do you notice the light? The light's reflecting, how it's different here and different there. And I'm like, yeah, I noticed that. And then I stopped caring like 8 seconds after.
Basically,
nobody cares.
No one cares.
Especially today, you go out for a social thing, restaurant. It's a. I've designed restaurants, and I understand that you get about 11 seconds before they've moved on to the next thing. You know, they walk in, they're like, "This place is nice. What's that?"
Yeah.
And
where's our server? I want to drink.
Yeah, I want to drink, and
Yeah.
and then the music has to be good. It can't be too loud. It can't be this, and they've already forgotten about the hours and hours of design that went into like, should this be curved? This little corner, should it be curved? And it'd be like a half-hour conversation to curve.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm like, it's finished. That's the best thing.
But do you think some of those, like, I go back and forth. That's an interesting thing you said. Do you think some of those finishes that we obsess over, the reason nobody notices it is because it's correct? Like if it wasn't round and it was corner, and every time you put your elbow down, you felt it, or it was like odd, then everyone would be like, oh, this table is really weird. But the fact that it's rounded and it's comfortable.
A good designer would already know that.
Whatever, yeah, correct. Oh, a good designer. So it's a good design.
Yeah.
It's good design is it adds to the ambiance and it doesn't stand out. It's not obtrusive. It's not the center of attention. It kind of adds to everything.
Right. Comfort is very important, right? You want to sit down, you want to be comfortable, you don't want to be crowded upon, and a good designer understands that, like, you might want to curve your bar, but kitchen equipment does not come curved.
Yeah, right. Yeah, good point.
Right?
Yeah.
Kitchen equipment is still the same rectangle.
Yeah.
So it has to fit somewhere. So we always would try to make the face of the bar flat so the kitchen equipment could go up against it.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you could play with the bar top, you know, but not too much, you know, like I always felt like, you know, make it just, curves are sexy. They're much better. Corners are cheaper. So you pick and choose those battles.
Yeah.
You know, you're like, there's a bar culture in this restaurant. A lot more people are going to be at the bar. So let's add that curve. But if everyone's just waiting here for a drink to get a table,
that doesn't matter.
They
Right.
need it.
Right.
They need it, you know?
Make it functional.
Women, especially, because you got to make the women happy, they rather hooks. You notice, like, 10 years ago, there was no hooks.
Right. Now as if there's not a hook, you're like, what kind of
there's
place
not a
is
hook,
this, man?
They'll talk about that for 10 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They're like, you
There's
kidding?
no
Are you
hook?
kidding?
God, are you serious?
No,
Or you
seriously.
you try to put your jacket on the hook and it just runs on the ground because there's no hook? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, you know, I always considered bar design some sort of social psychology. You know, like you're guiding people to go, I need you to go this way, and I need you not to bottleneck this area,
Yeah.
and I need you to feel not comfortable here for too long and go over there.
Yeah.
So that I can fill up,
Right.
this area and get people to go to this area.
Right.
And then once there's people there, people start to feel a sense of energy, and they're like, "Oh, I want to go there.
Yeah,
I go there," and then
Right on.
they're not thinking about
I
this.
agree.
You know?
Preston, is his microphone in a good spot? Can you? Yeah. Okay. Cool. So how did it go from you painting trains to doing murals around the world, meeting celebrities, doing murals in restaurants? Like, how does that jump happen?
Well, the easiest is a guy met a girl that I knew. I went to high school, and went to sleep with her. So his line, he's like, "So what do you do?" She's like, "I'm an artist." He's like, "I'm opening a nightclub. Would you like to paint my nightclub?" And she's like, "No, I do not want to paint your nightclub, but I know somebody who might." And I met that guy, and that was my first job. And I
Where's
liked
that
it.
at?
It was in East Northport, Long Island. And that guy has gone on. He's very, 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 very famous in Miami because his clubs did okay. But then he had a brilliant brainstorm and opened up Pucci's Pizza, which they end up with, I don't know, they might have been at the height maybe 25 of them. And he figured, I'll open a little pizzeria outside of every nightclub.
Genius.
Yeah, when there was no food
Yeah.
outside a nightclub. So people could come out of the nightclub in Miami at that time was 4 to 6 a.m. where they were still open. And people would come out, and if they're going to get in their car, 1 hour of having a pizza and a soda and just like hanging out outside there.
Yeah.
At least it wasn't as bad, and you become a little more coherent, But he made himself a fortune, and now he's very well known. He's a promoter. He was partners at Nikki Beach, and he's very well known. Like everybody in South Beach knows him. Everybody, and I'm, if you don't know him, you're weird. They're like, "Yo, you know Tommy Pooch?" I'm like, "I know Tommy Pooch for 40 years."
Yeah.
And he's a great guy. And I'm glad that, every now and then I get to see him and stuff like that. And I'm like, I remember you were 22, you're like 60, and that just, it added to the allure of Miami.
Yeah.
Or the allure of, there's these satellite businesses that come from like there's the shark and then there's the feeders, and he figured it out. He figured it out. It was much easier to sell pizza than to sell. Nobody thought to open a pizza shop at 4 in the morning.
Yeah, it's pretty genius.
Yeah. And he just found that niche. And
So what was the mural that you did for him then?
His place was called first it was called Dan's Alley because it was tucked in a mall, a strip mall, and there was a little alley thing that you had to get into the place. It failed miserably. It's terrible. And then he called it La Plage because he wanted to bring a French atmosphere to the people of East Northport, Long Island. It's like a fisherman's town.
Yeah, right.
And so we painted cabanas.
He couldn't find a happy medium between Danny's Alley and
yeah. It was the alley in Paris. You know?
Right. Yeah.
So that was what got me in because I had started a clothing company, and I did not like the clothing business at all. I did not like the repetition of it. And then painting a nightclub wall. He had very high ceilings, so it felt like painting subways. It was like without being chased. So it was nice. It was like, oh, I like this bigger, and then that turned into another nightclub, which was different murals, which again is something that appealed to me. Different murals, high ceiling. I painted the Fun House, which was a legendary nightclub in New York, where I first met. He's Louis Vega today, but he used to be little Louis Vega, and that just kept on growing. And then I painted a club in Long Island, and I had a partner. His name was Gil, and they named the club after us.
Really?
It was Gil and Ernie's Rock and Roll Club.
Yeah.
And what we did was the murals of famous album covers, Elvis, like all these just legendary rock and roll stars from the 50s to the 80s, and that club hit big. These guys were so connected. I could say it now because I think they're mostly dead. If you read the book Goodfellas, they're in it.
Really?
They're in the book. They paid me one time. They're like, all right, here's your pay. They paid in cash. It was like a bag of cash. And I opened up the bag and I'm like, I grabbed a 20 from the edge and it just popped off. And I grabbed another piece and that popped off. And I'm like, where has this money been?
Yeah.
And they were like,
where hasn't it been, actually? Start with that.
Yeah. They were like, we had a flood.
Yeah.
Okay, you had a flood. But it was like a lot of wrapped up 20s. The rubber band had cut like a third of it. So they were all like, it was just falling apart. And they literally, without a blink, were just bring it to the bank. They'll take care of it.
Wow.
I'm like, how do you know? Never mind. I've already asked too many questions. And they were right. Brought it to the bank. 3 days later, they were like, okay, that money was destroyed. Here you
go. Yeah.
So
do you think your relationship with being a foodie and an adventurous diner came from working at all these restaurants and nightclubs, or did it start before then?
Oh, it started after.
Yeah.
It started way after. Like back then, you ate food for sustenance.
Totally.
And New York and Long Island. There's something about Long Island that you go to a deli in Long Island, and they'll have like on construction paper, like their daughter wrote it.
Yeah.
And it'll be like the Godfather sandwich. And the
joy bag of donuts.
Yeah, or the Derek Jeter. Yeah. And it was all like, I'm like, why is a chicken cutlet with honey mustard a Derek Jeter? Yeah. I don't know. But every sandwich you tried, they were delicious. Like it was the Italian fresh bread, the semolina. Those semolina rolls could hold a chicken parm. Like you can't put a chicken parm on a baguette. It's just
correct.
Yeah,
it'll tear your mouth up.
Well, yeah, you're like, you have to eat half the chicken before you get to the baguette.
Yeah.
So growing up with this, everywhere you went, it was good food. It's mostly sandwiches, pizza, and Chinese food, and it was always good. And I grew up in Chinatown, so I'm a little Chinese food snob. I played on a volleyball team where it was me and another person that were Latin, and the rest of the team was Asian. And we would go to these restaurants in Chinatown that did not have English menus. So you get spoiled, but you don't know it. Yeah. You don't know that you're being spoiled until you go someplace and you're like, oh, this sucks. I went to first time in Paris, and the producers of the thing I'm working on, they take me to a place called the American Bar.
Dude, the Hard Rock, when I lived in Spain in 2003, the Hard Rock Cafe, or whatever, it was the busiest place on earth, and the burger was such trash, man. Yeah. I'm like, this isn't this is fucking horrible, man.
I don't think till this day I've had a Hard Rock burger.
Yeah. You should have the one in Barcelona.
But again, like I always say, like, there's so many places, there's so many choices, and Hard Rock is worldwide. Why get a Hard Rock burger?
Well, I think the people in Europe think it's a taste of America, so it's just completely different. Like I understand, but I understand the allure.
Yeah.
Like I get it,
Like I was in the Hard Rock in Amsterdam, and the thing that was really beautiful was they had a really good, like a mini museum of
memorabilia, rock and roll memorabilia,
And they had a pair of like these wingtip shoes, and they were metallic turquoise, right? And I was like, those days are over for me, but I'd wear those.
Those are dope. Yeah.
They were beautiful. And I looked down, I'm like, Elton John.
Figures.
Oh,
I was going to say Elvis, but Elton John fits the bill better.
Oh my God. I was like, those are beautiful, And then one thing I had never noticed was like Chrissy Hines guitar, Pat Benatar. Well, she didn't play the guitar, right? But the women guitars were so much smaller, you know. And I something you never notice, but you're like, oh my god, it's just like this big, you know. And like Nancy Wilson was the guitarist for Heart.
Yes. Right. I think so, right? Yeah.
Right. So and you know you realize you're like, oh yeah, they're not as big as the guys. So the guys.
Yeah, but so, like I look at Metallica's, you know, Hetfield's. It's like fucking tiny, man. Or I don't know. Is he 7 feet tall? Like his guitar is really small. Yeah. Preston is. Why are those guitars so small?
It's just called a short scale guitar, so it's easier for smaller people to play them.
But why does somebody like James Hetfield have a small guitar like that?
Probably just for he's going up and down the fretboard so much.
So yeah,
probably just easier for him to get up there fast.
But don't you think it looks weird when you see that guy playing that small guitar?
Oh yeah, it's always weird.
Yeah,
it's always weird.
Thank you, Preston.
You're welcome.
All right, Ernie, carry on.
Yeah. So again, my career in arts starts overflowing into other things that I like.
That's a natural progression for any artist, though. You just start to appreciate
and
the other people that are working as hard as you sometimes, right?
And then there's those things that, like, people say you should like because you're a graffiti artist. And I'm like, no, I don't. You know, like old school hip hop, I love it because I grew up on it. I grew up on it and the things they sang about. I'm like, oh yeah, that happened on the corner. That's a friend of mine. A friend of mine in Hartford, Connecticut. We were driving and he says, I think it was Rosalita by Springsteen that came on. What's the song where they're drag racing or singing in the parking lot?
Preston?
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Rosalita.
Rosalita, okay.
Yeah.
So
I'm glad you're here today, Preston. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. We could fact check.
Yeah, right.
And my friend's like, oh, that's such a great song. Doesn't it remind you when you... And I'm like, stop. Let me stop you now. It does not remind me of anything from my childhood, from the 80s. You want to know how I grew up, we gotta go to Public Enemy.
Right, yeah.
Cool
Grandmaster Flash.
And Grandmaster Flash. Yeah. And I'm like, I like the song. I like the song a lot. But it's me looking at another culture saying like, really? That's what you guys did? I grew up in Chinatown. You didn't have a car. Nobody had a car.
Yeah, that's funny you say that because like some of those movies from like the late 80s and early 90s, especially about being in high school. And I grew up in the Midwest on the South Side of Chicago and like, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. These kids are going to school outside and like ditching class and driving Corvettes, like, and wearing like blazers to school. Like it just never really, some of those John Hughes movies also just never really resonated with me because I wasn't involved in, I don't want to say culture, but that's not what school was for us, you know? And I went to like Catholic grammar school and high school. So it was like uniforms. And then you'd watch these guys go to this outdoor school and, wear blazers and, drive Maseratis. And I never really connected with any of that. And I never felt like there was songs being written or movies being made about like my so-called upbringing, like a Midwest Catholic school upbringing. AC/DC was the closest thing where they were just wearing those uniforms to school or they're on stage. But I could see like some of those things, like even Bruce Springsteen, who's like Mr. New York, like not resonating. New Jersey. Please excuse me. Yeah. But some of those
with the New Jersey,
East
New York
Coast things, it didn't really resonate. And to hear you say that those things didn't resonate with you either because you just had a different upbringing.
It was that hip hop, which was just coming out. It was coming out of Queens. It was coming out of the Bronx. And they were singing just the same way when NWA comes out on the West Coast with 6-7 years later. That kind of pushed De La Soul out. It pushed Tribe Called Quest out because all of a sudden everybody wanted to hear that gangster.
Like, man, I have a lot of feelings about that. Like, hip hop music back then was Run DMC. It was where's my party people? Throw your hands in the air. Everyone's having fun.
No, there was a lot of that.
Yeah.
But then you have Grandmaster Flash with the message.
Was message,
right?
yeah, correct.
And then you have Public Enemy starting to put names on cultural events that happened 20, 30 years ago or more.
The slave trade.
I was like, Rosa Parks. I read about her, but now I'm hearing about her with a melody behind it.
Yeah.
And or Flavor Flav, like saying, we have a role for you in our next movie, and he's like, oh, like Huey P. Newton, and they're like, no, he's more like a butler who chuckles and dances.
Yeah.
And you're like, and that's when I started finally realizing, wow, things are messed up.
Yeah.
Things are messed up, and this guy is telling me what it's like for them right now, which is weird because right now I have a problem with sampling because the hip hop community of today, they're not musicians. They write a rap, the producer puts down a track, and there's
like
no,
9
there's no
samples.
connection.
Yeah, it's like 9 samples. Yeah.
And they don't know where the sample came from.
Yeah, right.
And as much as I love Biggie, because he does have a hypnotic voice, but I'm like, I'm not a P. Diddy fan, or whatever name he's going by today. Because
he's going by Preston, actually. Yeah.
That's right, Preston P.
Preston P.
Preston P in the house. and they're singing. I'm like, you're stealing the sample. You didn't change the sample. I mean, like, I know that song.
Yeah.
It was a hit then. Of course, it's gonna be a hit now because nobody's making that music. So you're just taking it, and I have a problem with that because in the world of graffiti, you don't take somebody's artwork and say, I did that. It's a no-no. You don't steal somebody's recipe. You may be influenced by something. You're like, oh, that's a great combination. I have a combination that if I experiment with those two combinations, I could come up with something. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. I've done that where I'm like, ooh, what a great color combination. Can I use that somewhere? And I might hold that in my mind for 6-7 years. And then one day you're like, this would be perfect for here. This would be perfect for here. But I still have to make it my own. I'm not copying it, saying I'm being influenced by it. What did Shakespeare say? There's only 16 original ideas. Everything is based on those 16 ideas, and that's kind of mind-boggling.
Right.
You're like everybody takes something, but when you take the whole thing, you're like, come on,
right,
come on,
right.
I mean, those songs. I'm like, I can't remember the riffs right now that Biggie used, but I'm like, oh, I'm coming up. I think
I'm coming up is one. Yeah,
And you're like, you didn't change anything.
Yeah.
Public Enemy took like 6 riffs and mixed them all together.
Right.
And that's why they said at one point, Terminator X was like music's worst nightmare. Because they're like, you really want to sue us for this?
It's just a
because you only got a 6th.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right. And you take them all, you made a new beat. Madonna came out with Justify My Love and said it was this new beat, and Public Enemy was like,
hold my beer.
yeah, because we put out just like a side track in between tracks with no lyrics, and that's it. And they were like, no, this is something we found on the cutting room floor. And they were like, funny, that's not where we left it.
Yeah.
And it becomes a power game. Who's more powerful? Who's got a stronger lawyer? Who's going to go fight for this one track?
Yeah.
And a lot of hip hop today, like I saw some guy getting interviewed, and they were like, well, what do you think of the turmoil that's going on in Europe? He's like, yo, I try to stay out of politics because that's how I roll. I'm like, you try to stay out of pretty much everything, except when you go to the club, you're going to steal my wife and probably my money.
Yeah. And
then if that wasn't you, that was the other guy, and the other guy,
Yeah.
and the other guy. You know, like it's hard to listen to hip hop where I'm like, oh, another guy. He's so good because he's in the VIP room, and he's so good. He's got diamonds and in the Moet, and but you go back to the lyrics of, I mean, Public Enemy did that one song about the slave ships.
Yeah,
Crazy. You're like, can't trust it, right?
Can't trust
and
it.
you're like, man, this is not.
It's heavy.
It's not easy.
Yeah, it's heavy, man.
Yeah, and you're like,
it's got a great beat. You can bop to it,
Man.
but if you really listen to it, you're like, oh shit.
And great beat is the producers and Terminator X, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like Public Enemy and NWA, they've been screaming about this shit for decades, and now because of the iPhone, I don't know if not so much we didn't listen, or now because of the iPhone, it's like in our face, like some police brutality, you know, some cops are bad and some are good. I'm not anti-cop at all, but it's like, holy shit, you know, and these guys are like, we've been talking about this since the 80s. We've written albums about this. Like, glad you're on board now, but like, it's tough, man.
We had this conversation the other day. I lived in LA for 5 years, and you know, I had a good job. I'm not gangbanging. You know, like Dr. Dre said a couple years ago. He's like, I'm not out there gangbanging. I have a family.
Yeah.
I made it. I won the race.
Right.
I don't have to go back in the race and do it again. You know, like, game over. I want to enjoy my life and my kids, you know. And I always had this permeating fear of some police officer pulling me over and saying, out of the car, on your knees. And I'm like, no, this is going to be a problem. Because one, I don't break the law. You know, the worst thing I do is I roll through a stop sign. You know, that's it. Doesn't deserve. They pull somebody over in Beverly Hills. I don't see anybody on their knees with fingers interlocked behind their head. I never saw that. But we filmed in Compton. We filmed in a lot of those neighborhoods, and you see that. You see like 6 guys, and you're like, wow. If they told me to do that.
But did you ever get arrested for? I mean, spray painting trains is not necessarily the most legal thing in the world.
Still?
Oh, boy. I mean, I think that they're trying. I think that there's an act of Congress that. No, I'm just kidding. Did you ever get in any type of trouble? Like, what's the worst kind of trouble you got into graffitiing?
Nah, I never really.
And when did? Okay, so the better question is, when did you go from spray painting trains to this becoming a legit thing that you were passionate about? Like, at what point did you say, wow, this is my job and I can make money at this?
Well, probably I would say early 90s when I was painting a lot of nightclubs that I had, and like I said, I had a partner, and we had one car, so I would hire 6 people, all my graffiti artist friends, and we'd put them in the car and we would drive to Long Island, and then my partner would take 6 others and work on the clubs in Manhattan. So, and it gets to a point, it's not even a thing of like, I'm going to go vandalize trains. It's just, it gets to a point where you're like, I don't need to.
Right.
I don't need to. Like,
that's like kind of what I was getting
the
at.
The amount of time and effort and risk, this thing with a paycheck at the end starts to like,
Yeah, the trains aren't paying you, huh?
Yeah, they weren't. They were kind of still frowning on us. You know? And I was like, you know, I've said my piece for 15 years. I painted trains, I painted walls, I did this, I was having graffiti shows in galleries and all this stuff. And you start to realize, like, it's time to grow up.
Yeah.
It's time to grow up. You know, like, I used to love to ride my bike all over New York. Ride my bike. I could ride from Lower Manhattan to Central Park and back, and then stop at like 2 handball courts and play like 7 games. You know, I'm probably burning like 50,000 calories, right? When I get a bike now, I have a mission. Okay, we're gonna go there 2 blocks there. We're going to have a Cuban coffee. And then we're going to go over there. And then we're going to come back here and get back in the car and go home.
It's all mapped out, right? Yeah.
It's not like, la, 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 la. Oh, let's make a left. Why? Because there's a left.
Yeah.
And it's just different. It's different mentally, you know, and you don't, the things that I love to do, I just love them nostalgically. You know, I don't love to do these things. I don't want to do these things. You know, I have other things that are more important, more satisfiable, and bring me more things. You know, so painting on a wall, vandalizing a wall takes 2 minutes. Painting a mural on a wall takes 6-7 hours.
Yeah.
So if I'm doing either one of those things illegally and the punishment for the crime is the same, then what's the point? So if you're going to be a drug dealer and you're hanging on to, you know, a kilo, and the crime is the same as having 2 hits of ecstasy, well, then you're going to carry the kilo.
Yeah.
Because you're like, the sale of the kilo outweighs having 2 hits of ecstasy.
Right.
Like, why?
Or you could work for a pharmaceutical company and sell it legally.
Oh, and then you're fine.
That. Yeah, right.
Well done.
Yeah.
Well done. Like
Right.
my friend Eddie Izzard says, well done. You killed 2 people, you're going to jail.
Yeah.
You kill 100,000 of your own people.
You get a promotion.
Well done.
Yeah, well done. Right.
Very good.
Right. So what was your first real food experience that opened your eyes to a whole world of cuisine outside eating for substances?
It wasn't one, it was a series.
Yeah.
Right? Going out with my Chinese friends and trying things that I'm like, I don't know what it was on the menu.
Eating dim sum with Chinese friends at like a real dim sum place.
This was like 3 a.m. It wasn't dim sum.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is that? It tastes like linguine. And they're like jellyfish.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay.
Yeah. The texture of this pasta is just a bit
Yeah,
brittle.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
oh, yeah.
I'm like, it's like glass noodle. And they're like, And I went to their homes, you know, and they were like, whatever you do not eat the eye of the fish. That's for mom. You know,
Yeah.
like it's really like, that's for mom. Nobody touches it. The eye of the fish. I've gotten to eat eye of fish in the future, and I was like, weird, but not bad. Not bad. Like, you know, there's it's like the sturgeon.
Oh, caviar.
Caviar.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a big caviar in a different color.
Yeah.
You know, and I started finding out that there were some really, really delicious things, and you just had to search for them. You know, and then meeting chefs. I love meeting chefs, like I love meeting DJs, because they're amazing people of their crafts, of stuff that I have no idea how to do that. Like I don't know how you put something together.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how you take you give me a spray paint can, it's going to look like, it's going to look like a child just was like drawing with crayons on the wall. Like I don't know how to, it's a trained thing. Like I didn't grow up in a household of making meals and cooking and, filleting fresh fish and going to the market or baking bread. This is a trained art. I just happen to be interested in it. And I think if you get a motivated person interested in something, sky's the limit.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I've told this story before, I feel like I just happened to walk into a kitchen one day and be like, I need a job. And I think if I would have walked in through the front door and said, I want to be a server, I think that my trajectory of life would have went a completely opposite direction. I'd be some sort of front of the house general manager or, front of the house restaurant owner.
Absolutely.
It just so happened to be that I was in the kitchen. I think I was just so starved for some sort of discipline and something different from like the 9 to 5 that I just found these group of pirates when I was in high school that, Chef Mike handed me 600 pounds of salmon fillets and said you could fuck up the first, 499 pounds, but after that you're going to have to do it right.
Right.
And it was just so interesting and cool. And I was young and impressionable, and this is what I fell into. Yeah. I feel if I would have picked up a spray paint can with a graffiti artist, I feel if I would have sculpted, I feel if somebody would have been a tattoo artist, I would, an art form, working with my hands, working on a car, You know, it could have been any one of those things when I was 17 years old,
Right.
because I was so starved for that outlet
Right.
to learn something else and not, you know, read about literature in book or go do geometry in school. It was so boring to me. School was, I was just, I'm not a school person.
Yeah,
And graduating high school and going to more school was not, it just wasn't in the cards. It wasn't,
Right.
it wouldn't have been good for me. You know, it would have been a waste of money. So
Right.
I feel fortunate.
I have well, when I had a gallery in Wynwood for 8 years, and we partnered up with the school system, and they would bring us 3 days a month. They'd bring like 3 school buses with high school kids, and the kids would just dump out, and the kids loved the graffiti work. They're drawn to it. They see it on the streets, and now they see it in the gallery. And I would just basically do a simple Q&A, like, who has any questions? There's no question that's stupid, you know, because it just can start a conversation, you know. So if, say, like, one guy's like, well, you can get arrested if you go tagging on the streets. So are you saying I shouldn't go tag on the streets anymore? And I say, I'm not telling you to do anything.
Right.
What I'm telling you is understand what you're doing. Understand that if you're tagging on them streets, the way to get popular is you have to tag a lot, because there's 25 other people doing the same thing. And the only way you get forgotten is, 1, you get locked up, 2, you stop.
You stop, right?
And that's it. So I'm saying, do what feels great in your heart. Understand the rules and understand
and the consequences.
The law.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
The laws are different for graffiti today. The laws are, you know, I mean, some hard ass cop could be like, I'm going to charge you under the Patriot Act laws.
Yeah, right.
And you're going to do some time, just because you wrote your name on a wall. You know, just because the cop has a hard on for shit like that.
Right.
And I'm like, if you understand that when you grow up and you get on an airplane because you want to see Paris, and they give you a little piece of paper at the end that says, have you ever been arrested for a felony? And you have to write yes.
Yes.
So you're saying,
I wrote my name on a train back in 1989.
You're saying, I'm okay with writing my name on this wall, getting arrested, getting charged as a felony, and I have to plead the deal out because can't have no money to go to court for this, to fight it. And every time you travel from then on,
the rest of your life,
if it's a 10-hour flight, you're tacking another hour and a half.
Yeah.
To sit there and talk to people about why you wrote your name.
Yeah.
And they think it's the stupidest thing they've ever heard in their life.
Right.
They're like, why did you write your name?
Yeah. Because I want to be cool.
Because I want to be cool. I wanted to be cool in my neighborhood. And all I say to them, I'm like, you could write your name 1,000,000 times. I don't care. I don't care. But no, it's going to follow you. It's going to follow you, and the laws are different. When I painted my name, you get a slap on the wrist, you know, because everybody's like, it's harmless. I just caught you because I happen to be here at the moment where you're doing what you're doing at the moment. But today, with these laws, if I was 20 years old, I'd be like, nope, I will get permission for a wall, and I'll do a mural on that wall.
Yeah.
I'll do it for free, or at least cover my costs.
Sure.
Because that's going to be more long-lasting, you know? Because nobody except the street culture cares that you wrote your name in 1,000,000 places. And here's the thing. Graffiti is still respectful. We do not write on commercial vehicles. I mean, we don't write on non-commercial vehicles. And we don't write on people's houses.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes somebody fucks up and will write on something. I mean, I've been with graffiti artists back in the day, and somebody wrote on somebody's house. And we literally were like, what did you do that
all of us.
for?
Yeah, right.
Why would you do that? This is somebody's home.
Yeah.
They paid for it. This is their home. Now they hate us. They hate us badly because you did that.
Yeah.
You know, like it almost gets to a point where you're like, you know, you say I'm gonna go back and say I'll clean it, but you really want him to do it. You know, and that's really New York was Mecca for graffiti. Philadelphia had a lot of graffiti. Washington had a lot of graffiti, but New York was the Mecca, and it really got to a point where you're like, people were sick of it. They were sick of it. It was all over the trains. It was all over the streets. It was all over the walls. But it wasn't on your car.
Yeah.
It wasn't on the front door of your house. You know, so it's energy, right? It's energy. Find a place to put these kids and put their energy somewhere. You know, like let's put these kids on the side of subway cars in a safe area and have them paint Pepsi.
Right, have it commissioned. Yeah, right.
Pepsi.
Right.
And Pepsi is paying for all of it.
Right.
And the artist is going to get some money. MTA gets some money. New York City gets some money. But you know what you get? A vinyl wrap.
Yeah.
That says Pepsi. And you're like, so Pepsi paid, MTA said yes, and now you're still seeing the same shit, except it's corporate now. So you're like, what?
How many corporate gigs do you do?
Not so many anymore. I try to avoid them unless I need to do it. But I mean, people always interview me online, and they'll say like, you know, like what's your client list? And I'm like, it's better to talk about the ones that I haven't, because the client list is just ridiculous. I'm like, I could write 2 pages of client lists from, you know, Sprite, Pepsi to Nikon to like it just goes on and on, you know, and people don't realize that graffiti is a multi-billion-dollar business.
Is it really?
I was just on Instagram. 4 of my friends are in Milan because it's Design Week, because they just designed a set of I don't know what they designed. I don't know if it's backdrops or this, but it's for Kohler. You know, you're like, you know, like every
for who?
Kohler, the faucet company.
Oh, Kohler, yeah.
So you're like, I don't know what they did, but
I think graffiti. I think tubs and toilets.
Right. But you have to think about in the 60s with Jackson Pollock and Salvador Dali and all these beatniks they were living in New York. You know, you go back and watch the movie with Ed Harris playing Jackson Pollock.
That's a great
and
movie.
He brings Lee Remick, who's a big gallery owner, up to a 6th floor walk up.
Yeah.
You can't do that today.
Yeah.
A gallery owner would be like, no, I'm not walking up 6 floors.
Yeah.
You know, why? Because it's just so much more cliquey today. It's so much more cliquey. I will hire you because somebody recommended you, not because you're good, not because I know you're good. I can make you good. You know, I don't think Damien Hirst is very good. You know, I'm like, polka dots. Come on.
What was the banana that was taped to the wall?
That guy.
I mean,
I have a friend who knows that guy very well. That guy passed away.
Oh, did he really? Oh, that's too bad.
And you know, if you're interested, you have to look into like 2 steps behind. And it was Art Basel in Miami, and he was trying to show the ridiculousness.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Like he was already an artist, so he's got a track record behind him where people can say, well, you know, he didn't just come from nowhere, you know. And he was like, let me show you how ridiculous Art Basel is. And he went and just taped this thing, and it becomes the hit of the show.
Right, yeah.
And he's like, you see?
It's all everybody talked about. It overshadowed everything else.
Yeah. And he was right. He was right. There is a ridiculousness of it. Or Banksy, right? Banksy has that show in Sotheby's. The piece sold for $3 million, I think it was, and then it shredded. Yeah. But it didn't shred completely. So now there's a piece with a half a Banksy and a half a Banksy shredded,
Yeah.
and that piece is worth $9 million now,
Right.
because it still has the piece in it.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, brilliant. It's
Yeah.
brilliant. That's what artists are supposed to do. Bang on the door of socialism, not socialism, sociability. Like this is what everybody's doing. I'm going to knock on
Go against the grain.
yeah,
Right.
I'm going to I'm going to fuck the system.
Mm-hmm.
I need to. That's what the artists have to do. That's what the musicians have to do. That's what, if you go in the middle of the road, it's the worst place to be. You rather be hated or loved,
Mm-hmm.
but you try to go in that middle, nobody's going to like you.
Yeah.
No one.
Yeah.
Everybody's gonna be like, oh, you're just trying to keep your money.
Uh-huh.
You're just trying to keep everybody happy. And then you get these Alec monopolies, and you get this Mr. Brainwash, and you get people who are like, oh, what I was doing before, I make more money doing this. And I'm like, so you actually don't know where to go to buy a paintbrush.
Yeah.
Now you know, because you have a budget and you can send somebody.
Yeah. Right.
It's like a Guy Fieri. I'm like, this guy's talentless. He's talentless. But what am I gonna do? My words.
With the internet age and the TV personality and the reality TV show age, kind of like boosts. I wouldn't say Guy Fieri's talentless. I mean, he did come up in. I go back and forth, man. He actually does a lot of like charity work with restaurants and stuff.
That's different. That's different than talent.
He did come up in restaurants, working and operating restaurants, but he kind of cut his teeth on a TV show. And the way he cut his teeth on a TV show is being so outlandish with the hair and the glasses and everything.
I call that American outlandish.
Mm-hmm.
I call Anthony Bourdain outlandish.
Mm-hmm.
Because...
Well, Anthony Bourdain had a message, though.
But he never faltered from who he was.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, absolutely. It was what you see is what you get.
Yeah. And you either like him or you don't like him.
Yeah. I feel some of these people, you just offer them $1 million more and they'll be like, they work for CNN and now you're going to work for here, or you work for the Food Network. I'll just go over here and say the complete opposite of what I was saying,
When I think I was on a flight to New York recently, and there was a show, Beating Bobby Flay.
Mm-hmm.
Beating Bobby Flay. So what they do is they have these contestants, and the contestant chooses the Iron Chef's secret ingredient, and then they both battle. And I'm like, Bobby, come on.
Yeah.
Come on. Hey, you were an Iron Chef, which was a good concept.
Well, before that, I mean, Bobby Chef's an extremely talented cook.
Oh, yes, he is.
Extremely talented.
He is. His knowledge of stuff,
whether
it goes from dessert
to barbecue,
to spicy,
Southwest,
to Asian.
to Asian,
I mean, he literally, and something happened, I think, to him in the past couple of years where he's not as good as performer as he was.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he was very likable.
Well, the shows are more watered down than ever. Like, you should just go back to having real cooking shows, like chefs actually teaching you how to cook things.
But
why does everything have to be a contest?
Yeah,
I don't understand. Cooking.
And the clock starts now.
Yeah, right. It's like I don't walk into the restaurant and be like, "All right, guys, here we go. You have 5 minutes." They'd be like, "Fuck you, man."
The only ones who should have that is the kids.
Yeah.
Because they need a little constraint.
This is fun, yeah.
Yeah,
but it's like, I don't want a half an hour to cook anything. I want to take as much time as I need. Because you know why? In a half an hour, I'm going to change a dish 30 times.
Yeah. So this is the creative spectrum we live in today. I'm fortunate. You're fortunate. I guess you're fortunate. We just met, but I'm guessing you're fortunate as well.
Fortunate.
Yeah. Like you get a little niche, and you can find a place where you can say, I get to do what I want to do, and I get to say what I like to say, so long as I don't really piss off people.
Yeah.
And that's really the end of the day. Like, I got the reason why I do well today is because a long time ago, I told one of my clients, he's like, "Oh, I'm doing a pizza shop in New York. It's going to be called Venice Beach. And I want a mural." And I'm like, "Gondolas." And he's like, "What?" I'm like, you want gondolas."
Yeah.
on
How'd
the
you
wall.
know?
Yeah, he's like, how'd you know? I'm like, whoa, wild guess. You know?
I just got back from Vegas.
And I told him, I'm like, okay, so gondolas is going to be X amount of dollars. Artist is going to be like 2/3 less.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, why is it so much more money to paint my gondolas? I'm like, because your gondolas is a stupid
Yeah, because I don't
idea.
want to do it.
It's a stupid.
I mean, I will do it.
Not that I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'll do it.
Yeah.
It's not going to go on my website.
Yeah.
It's not going to.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's going to see it except people go to your restaurant.
Yeah.
And then what I tell them, honestly, and this happens a lot, I say, go into your community and find an artist who needs this job, because I don't need this job.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need this job. I don't want to do this job. But there is somebody out there who is me 20 years ago who needs this job. And you'll get a lot of good support from the neighborhood. It's a lot of good vibes. What I'm charging you, offer him 2/3 of that.
Right.
You'll save some money, and you'll be doing something really good, because that artist needs to grow to the point where I am. I can't keep coming down to the creativity of the world. I need to bring that creativity to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I want to justify what I charge in my murals. You know where it is? It's because I've been doing it for 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now I need to teach you. Bring your game up to me, because then there's no excuse then. Then you say, this is what it costs. This is what it costs. I understand. If you have to paint an inflatable Budweiser can, I've done it.
I get it. Right. Yeah, I get it.
If you have to do it, go do it.
Mm-hmm.
Go do it. But little by little, creep your back prices, your lowest prices, and start bringing them closer to the price you wish. Just as much as you can, job by job. And then we all end up in the same place, and the client stops asking for stupid shit.
Yeah, I agree.
For stupid
I
prices.
agree. Yeah.
And I'm, because I'm like, again, you know, I can't paint all the jobs. I physically can't.
Yeah.
And physically I don't want to.
It's
You know?
nice to be in a position where you can start picking the work you want to do instead of
But you
doing
have
the
to
Budweiser
make a
cans. You got-
conscious.
yeah.
It has to
But
be
you
a
kind of have to go
conscious-
through it also, right?
Yes,
You know?
you have to say to yourself, I can't do that no more.
Yeah.
You know, if you're painting something and you're painting, you love to paint, but what you're painting makes you miserable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a, you know, I have a friend of mine. I told you about my DJ friend, and I was living in Moscow at the time, and he played Moscow. I didn't get to see him. We were there at different times, but everybody in Moscow was like, "Oh, so and so is here. So and so is here. Oh, it was great. It was fantastic." And then they found out I was friends with him, and they're like, "Oh, can you bring him back again?" I'm like, "I'll ask him when I see him." And I asked him, and he's like, "I'm never going back there again. I'm never going back there." And he explains it to me, and it's a perfect explanation. He's like, Russian people, they don't dance. They don't dance.
Really?
They fly me out there, and they take selfies, and that's what they do. They say, look who I'm with. Look who I'm with. And he's like, I need that energy from the dance floor. I need those people to be like, yeah, let's keep going. And he's like, I don't get that. They take these pictures and they sit back down and say,
that's
like,
insane.
and they say I was there.
Yeah.
And he's like, it was exhausting. It was exhausting. He's playing a 4 or 5 hour set, and that's a short set for him.
Yeah.
But you know, usually he'll play longer if the crowd is into it. He's like, I've played 8 hour sets, not. And he told the promoter, he's like, nah, it's okay. And they'll come. They're like, we have other DJs coming up, and he's like, do they want to get on? And they're like, no, they're listening to you play. This is great.
Yeah, they're sitting over there taking selfies.
Yeah, and now they're pumped. So when he leaves, they keep that party rolling.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's the way it should be, right? It should be just like that, where you're inspiring, you're getting people, you know, sweaty, where their hair is like my hair doesn't do that. My hair does not go down. My hair is just, it just stays right where it is.
Yeah.
I told Ryan it's Scotch guarded.
Yeah.
So
where do you get your inspiration? Like, let's say, you're doing the mural at Iggy's, and I basically just gave you 1 or 2 points of what we're doing. Like, how did you come up with the design for that?
For me, it's because it's so visual. Like, the more pictures you sent of the exterior, the more. It sounds stupid, but you probably understand it. It speaks to me.
Yeah.
Remember the first day I got here, I'm like, I need to see the location.
You need to touch the wall.
I actually don't need to touch the wall. It's
like that scene in Gladiator where he goes to the field and he's got to pick up the dirt and kind of like put it in his hands. Yeah, that's what I felt like that was happening, like the wall's speaking to me.
I have to see where's traffic coming from.
Yeah.
Where are people looking first
interesting.
From?
Yeah.
So you said there's going to be stores over there. I'm like, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So they'll be in the store. If the store is glass windows, they can see. And if they're hungry, they can't see any other place. And they'll be like, let's go over there. That looks really interesting. And that's what I need to see. I need to see the flow. I need to see the feel of and you see, we've made simple changes.
Yes.
Through the course, because I'm like, this might be too complex. This might be I think it'll be better. And it's great that you have the handicap spot, because unless there's a handicap car parked there, it's wide open.
You always see it. Yeah.
It's wide open, which is really nice. So I always need to go to the space and feel the vibe of the space. If I don't feel the vibe of the space and I'm working off of photos, that's what happens, is like a lot of changes will happen later when I'm actually on set.
Yeah.
If I get to a space, I really can get a vibe of it and be like, oh, no. What we were going to do over there. No, we're going to do that over there.
Yeah.
And that's it's going to be better. I can just feel it. And again, being in hundreds and hundreds of nightclubs and restaurants where you've seen the mistakes, you remember them. You're like, oh, that was a bad idea. I painted a dance floor fluorescent red. Nobody got on it. We called it lava.
That's good. The floor is lava.
Because people were like, I'm not getting on that thing.
Yeah, right.
I had to come back and paint it gray.
Whose idea was it to paint a red floor?
Me.
Yeah, nice. Great idea, Ernie. Great idea.
This is a stupid idea.
This is gonna be awesome. Everyone's gonna love it.
And then I had a conversation with another friend who's a DJ, and he's playing a room, and there's 3,000 people in the room, right? And he gives me the rundown, and he's like, the first hour, nobody gets on the floor. He's like, so you just play whatever you want to play. It's usually like non-committal, and then he's like, just watch them. You watch them. They go to the bar, let them get a couple drinks in them, and they come back. Now they're a little like looser. Mm-hmm. And he's like, now you play the things that the girls want to hear. Because the girls are fearless. They get out onto the dance floor.
Yeah.
And
that's my song.
Yeah. And then they're trying to get the guys. And the guys are like, no, I'm finishing my drink. Yeah. And I'll be right out there. I have to go to the bathroom for the 4th time. and they'll do this. And little by little, more girls on the dance floor. And now there's no girls on the side. Mm-hmm. So the guys are just hanging out with the guys.
Right.
And then finally one guy will be like, I'm going out there. Yeah. And he's like, you get the guys, and now you got them. They're in a good mood. And then you start giving them some classics.
And then everybody's out.
Then they're like, oh, oh, and they're dancing to the classics. and now they're having a really good time. And then you give them some more stuff that they know. And now the dance floor is 80% full. And he's like, now you can see they're having a really good time. They're enjoying themselves. Yeah. They didn't fall into the abyss and never to be heard from again.
They're not at the bathroom.
And he's like, then you can hit them. Mm-hmm. Then you hit them. You hit them with the stuff. And that's when your set starts.
Yeah.
He's like, I could play this. I could play that and see how they're moving around. And that's what he does. He's like, 3 hours. 3 hours, I got him. The whole dance floor is full. Everybody's having a great time. Bathroom break. So he plays something not so good. And he lets them go to the bathroom because they drank. They were drinking. They need to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, he draws them back in with the, the same form.
They're like, I don't like this song so much.
Yeah, right.
And they go,
right, yeah.
And I'm like, you're a little freaking maestro.
Mm-hmm.
You're conducting the crowd.
Yeah.
You're moving them around.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's like, when I get him back, he's like, that's usually when the ecstasy kicks in. He's like, now I could hit them with anything I want.
Yeah.
And they'll be there for the next 4 hours.
Yeah. Right on.
And you're like, already you talked about 6 hours. 6 hours of him. And he's like, I'll get him for 4 hours. We'll give him another bathroom break. I'll give him another 2-3 hours after that. And then it's just, they're happy.
Yeah, it's just fun after that.
They're happy. You can play. People are coming on the dance floor, leaving the dance floor. He's like, now there's like thousands of people on the side, thousands of people on the dance floor.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is brilliant.
That's
This is
amazing,
brilliant.
Right.
I'm like that's and it makes you think about it a lot differently.
Yeah.
I agree. So,
well, Ernie, thanks for coming out and talking with us first of all.
Man, we didn't even get to the beginning.
Yeah, I know, right? It was like almost 2 hours now. Thanks for coming out and doing the mural. It's far exceeded my expectations, and I can't wait for everybody in Nashville to see it.
Me too.
You're a true legend of your craft, man, and I'm really happy that we're friends, and I'm really happy that we kept in contact, and I feel like it's going to be a better friendship after this. So
Yeah.
somebody wants to find you or get a hold of you or look at your artwork, where do we go?
ErnieVales, ErnieVales.com.
Mm-hmm. And social media?
It's all pretty much
It's all there, yeah.
You'll
Great.
find it. If you forget, just put Ernie Graffiti in Google. And, besides those 2 photos that I'm very embarrassed about, everything else is fine.
Excellent. Right on. Well, thank you for sitting down with us, man. You have an amazing story, and it was a pleasure
great.
chatting with you.
Yeah, this
Awesome.
is great.
Thanks, brother.